I like the Whitney. Oh, I like it. Every time I go in there's some kind of magic about the Whitney. Got all the space in it. I don't know. I heard people say it's shitty, but there's something nice about the space there, and I just got them rooms. I believe I'm going to go in there and take one of them rooms. Yeah, mama. I believe I'm going to go in there, and I think there's a little room in there, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do with it. I want to set me up something kind of in the middle of it. I don't decided how I'm going to just do it yet. I just kind of done something. I think I'm going to set me up a little room within the big room, yeah. I'm going to close it on down for you. I'm going to close it on down so you kind of have to just kind of ease in there. It ain't going to be no big open way in there where you can see no big pieces of plank and mud and bullshit and concrete and all that. No, I want to narrow it on down so you like coming in through a little door. Yeah, Papa. You been out there in that damn museum hanging around on the damn streets, you know, walking up and down, mind your own, whatever you're doing on out there on the road. I'm talking about, I say I want you to come in, you have to go through kind of a little door there. I don't mind the idea, maybe you kind of narrowing it on down a little bit so you just kind of ease into the little room. Yeah. Maybe have me a little room if I can get one, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 feet, whatever big it is, or something out from 20 feet, and at least get the ceilings up a little bit. I want to go in there, and I want to go in there and make sure they got plenty of lights, yeah. I want to make sure they got plenty of lights on me, yeah. I got them right down there coming from the ceiling on down in there, yeah. And then I want them to let me have about, I don't know, 5 or 10 people to kind of help me work there. You know, I need about 5 or 10 people to help me work, kind of, you know, kind of help me work like that. I'll tell you one thing. And then I want them to leave, I want them to leave I want them to take and leave me alone, and I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna put me up a chain link fence around it. I want me about a 6 or 7 foot chain link fence around it, you know, and I want 3 strands of eagle brand barbed wire at the top of it, and I'm gonna put that on up, and it's gonna have one little gate, and that little gate will be directly across from the opening where you come into the room in the first place. But that gate won't be open. And inside that wire, I'm gonna make me a little scene, like I want to make me some kind of little scene. I'm gonna put a lot of animals out there. I'm gonna have these tall flamingos made out of plaster, and I'm gonna have these little birds. I'm gonna have maybe animals out there, and I'll have parrots and stuff and everything, and I'll have little shrubberies, and I might have pyramids of grass out there, and I might have flowers, and I might have rocks and gurgling brooks and whippoorwills and all kind of little creepy crawler jumpers out there in the middle of it, you know. They'll all be things I'm going to pick up. Maybe I'll get them somewhere. I may have to make them. I don't know. I'll get them. I'll set me up something out there, and there'll be little fountains of bubbling water out there, and in the background music and sound systems will be hidden in the flowers, and I'll have the speakers coming out with the sounds of the bee hums, yeah. We'll walk them on around there, and we'll bring them lights down, yeah. And I can see it now, and I can know it in my mind, and I believe I'm gonna have to do it for the museum. I want y'all to know that don't let it worry you none, because I need to do this piece some big damn place. We're gonna have a lot of fun with it. I want y'all to all come see it when you come see it on me. I'm doing it for all of us, and I want us to all come to look at it, yeah. I say we make the ceiling out of clouds, the little jumpers and everything up top, and let them hang down and remind us of what's going on, having the type of ascension thing that happening. I say we'll make the garden and lights and everything out there in the middle, whatever. We left Tallahassee with 8 people, family, friends, and students, 1 international pickup truck, 1 big U-Haul truck, and 1 Lincoln Continental. We showed up at the Whitney Museum and just told them we simply had to move in and take over. They had thought in their naivety it would be just take maybe 2 days, 3 days to put this up. They were used to minimal work. We took over and worked nonstop for 5 days. So here we are at the Whitney Museum in 1974, at which time I had done several things that at that time we called do the museum. We called them pieces, taking a room, and things like this. Installation work as a way of describing something was in its infancy. So here we come up, imbued with a type of spiritualism, if you will, pagan that it might be, of the spiritual world. So a crew, we land in New York City, we're at the Whitney Museum, and we begin to unload on a clean white floor. In no time at all, the museum sees what they have gotten into, as do we, and they begin to let us stay there all night. A careful placement begins to occur. We had an area where, in my own mind, of course I can talk about it quite easily now, but back then I just worked intuitively.
But I wanted to have a space where, metaphorically, animals could come in and cross a rim, a spiritual filter, if you will, go out across this plane and have their spirits transmitted up and out of these power poles. Well, it's very articulate now. At the time, we were just working. You drew. Each symbol meant something. They were carefully placed. Here we're looking at Pachuco dot oyster shells on ashtray sand, pure white. I'd done configurations in several other museums, but after talking so loudly for so long, I knew this was a put up and shut up situation. Someone had already talked about installation work. We came in, unloaded the trucks, and we started on this all in my background piece. I'd been away from Florida. I come back. I realized that there's been a takeover of the ecology there. I'm one of those who believes that instead of us doing in animals, perhaps in humans just go ahead and do it themselves in. We are in some ways still the cancer of the earth. We are the skin cancer of the earth. And in the 70s, it was such a volatile time. You had to say it right away. You had to make it vehement. Of course, an eagle with a snake hanging out of its claws became the lights themselves of the exhibition. I'd learned that I didn't want the trivialness of a spotlight on it, that it had to light itself from within. In this implied pagan wistfulness, if you will, I felt that very quickly you could bring someone off the street who maybe even couldn't spell sculpture, much less had seen one, and have them feel a type of nature and a type of understanding about it simply by looking. So what did we do? We went in. It's immaculate. It was clean. We had cypress knees with eyes in them, alligators, shark jaws with ducks resting on rabbit fur, corn, tiger shells. We had marbles on golf ball tees. All of this arranged immaculately around wiring harnesses we had built back in Florida. We had painted the walls an atmospheric blue so that as you looked across and through the exhibition, as you walked around it, this homage to animals on the floor, you looked at as if looking through silhouettes. The eagles, which were the lights for the top of the ceiling, had brightly painted white wings, and as they reflected downward, these caused a type of flickering and kaleidoscopeness of shadows across the wall. I look back now, and like I say, I couldn't articulate it then, but I realized we were doing something. The people who were there that helped me stayed with it. We knew we had something, and there was a feelness and a chargedness in the air that we were doing something different. The word began to get out, and soon people visited us, coming into the museum, noses peering around the corners as if something was going on. We densified the space. Everywhere you looked, there were single individual objects that then in themselves meant very little. They acted as mere words, but when those words were seen together, they became paragraphs, sentences, fragments, and concepts. I feel now looking at this, I had written a piece of criticism about painting on the floor. I feel now looking at it that that's what we were doing. We were painting, we were working a narrative on the floor with found materials, and materials indeed that we had prepared here in Florida and brought to New York. Snake poles, as we see, made up around 12 feet. Animals, birds, all of these, although still nothing moving very much except for the bobbing head flamingos, you got a sense that things went in and were antennaed out. There were areas of trial where one in some ways might have to prove itself as a spirit. You had to walk through bones, you walked through alligators, you walked through shark jaws and the like. Heck, I'd seen so much at that time in the way of us as a country becoming so ecologically uncaring. There was vehemency, of course, when I was a young man. We're looking at film that I haven't seen this in 32 years. And that vehemency had to be let out. A quick and way to say, we as a country need to look closer at this. I look back now, And just the notion that I could have lived in a time where we could be this reflective, where we could break this many rules, is really something. So much of the sculpture I see today is dependent on whether it will fit in a public place. It has been neutered, downified, and somewhat made bloodless. That wasn't the case in the early 70s. We were wide open. In performance, we were there. We called it being your own shrink. In installations, we called it doing a piece, doing a museum, taking a room. And that's exactly what we meant. And I hope that today, as more and more people keep turning the corner, we have more and more artists from everywhere with more and more opportunities. I hope that they don't forget that relevance should always be a keystone of the arts. And that even in pieces like this where that were decidedly temporal and only there for a brief time to be enjoyed, meaning was taken. The interesting thing was that we grossed the 1972 International truck out at 8,600 pounds, meaning we're carrying approximately 2 tons in just a pickup truck. We carried rocks, we carried corn, we carried oyster shells, we carried all manner of seashells and everything you see here except the big pile of brown New Jersey sand. So as we look over it and walk away from it some, you can realize the simplicity. I simply wanted people to walk a path around it. You had scallops, you had bobbing head flamingos, but you did not visit the piece, you were in the piece, and that set it apart. You did not have a time to psychologically distance yourself from it when you went in the room. When you were in the room, you were in this piece, and you were in the spirit that it imbued. All of our lighting, wiring, and planning for that had been done back home. When we brought it there, we put it together. We would later leave the room and there not be one single surface there that you could not eat off of. Although with humbled materials, we left it clean, immaculate, and to some extent sterile and devoid of human participation. Down through the details where you see the spirit filter itself by which the animals crawled over this hump of packed New Jersey sand, where small plateaus of sand dollars held zebras, seahorse fish, and the like. These small details would be walked through them. You would go down across the plain. Meanwhile, above you, the eagles with snakes, a symbol at that time of a shaman, the death of a shaman, were everywhere. I look back and realize how imbued it must have been for all of us in the late 60s and 70s. We were so dogged out, we were so Indianed out, we were so returned to the earth out that it took over almost everything that we did. And yet, when I look at it now, I'm even more proud for all of us on this effort and people who have continued installation. Do we really need any more minimal stuff than we had back then? For God's sakes, at some point it got that you could throw stones out on a piece of floor and that would be called a piece. You could stack a concrete block and paint a little number on them and that became something. I look back and realize that the cornerstone for certain types of art, in my opinion, will always be that more is more, less is not more. And I remember with fondness taking and painting these eagles, carefully hanging the snakes, getting this walls ready to disappear, fall away from you as we got them blue, so that the aura and essence of the sculpture completed the room. Even from aerial shots, it didn't matter where you were. You could have been a dragonfly in this room, and when you looked down on it, by God, you'd have been affected too. So at that time, it was one of the few exhibitions that the Whitney held over. They actually held it over a week from its given time. And we then packed it up and, of course, gave everything away. People came in. They took the corn to feed the pigeons. We gave shells to the kids. Everybody got a souvenir shell that had been in there. All the people who ran the elevators and helped run interference for us, they got whatever they wanted. And of course, we left there penniless to some extent, owing money, sure, a few skint knuckles. But by God, we felt we'd done something. And sure enough, not long after this, with many other artists working as well, installation art in America began to be a common factor. It began to be like narrative had been when, oh no, if you write on your work, it's just, why don't you just write a book? Now installation's taken for granted everywhere you go. Boy, oh boy. These quick shots really remember for me the feeling of it. Blinking along, bringing you in, attracting you, if you would, trying to focus on a purpose of some young artist from Florida would have at the time. It certainly wasn't only for me, though. So many people contributed. So many people's lives and personality gave forth richness to bring this type of concern into being. I'm just glad that I was one of them that was there and happened to have the good fortune to have been able to do an exhibition like this in New York City at a time when it counted. Boy, oh boy. Of course, I could have taken the brass ring to stardom. I was invited, given places with studios, offered to come up there. Prominent people wrote me. But I was just too taken with motorcycles, fast roads, and other activities that weren't directly art related. But at least for a moment, by God, we came from North Florida here and had a great time in New York City. Thanks, Tyler, for keeping this film after all these years. And thanks to everybody who helped me on that piece 32 years ago. This is the Sand Rock, Shell and Seed, Power Pole and Money Treed, Dual Catenary X Ascension, Eagle Light and Spirit Retention, Graven Image to the Land, all in my background piece.
Do it one more time, a little quicker.
Okay.
A little more rhythm and
Yes,
quicker.
sir. Okay, here we go.
4/4 time.
4/4 time. This is the Sand Rock, Shell and Seed, Power Pole and Money Treed, Dual Catenary X Ascension, Eagle Light and Spirit Retention, Graven Image to the Land, all in my background piece.